Professor Catherine Cole.
Hello everyone. My big idea is an examination of the impact of the French explorer La Pérouse on Australia, particularly contemporary Australia, where the teaching of Australian history and fiction in our schools and universities remains a matter of discussion and debate. Whose history and why should it be studied remains an important element of that debate. Jean-François de Gallo, Comte de La Pérouse. That a French explorer, and a doomed one at that, landed at Botany Bay in 1788 is of great interest to me as a Francophile, something I've been since a very young age, and also as a creative writer. La Pérouse's story offers numerous conundrums, those what-if moments of history when things might have turned out very differently. So what sparked this interest? Well, it all began when I was a small child at primary school. You can imagine a Sydney public school in the suburbs, western suburbs, asphalt playground. My teacher was talking about the explorer Captain Cook and about Captain Phillip and the First Fleet. My parents are post-war migrants who came to Australia by ship, so family storytelling meant I was interested in anything maritime. Then the teacher said, "Aren't we lucky children that Captain Phillip beat La Pérouse? If he hadn't, we'd all be speaking French today." By that age, I was also interested in anything French. Wow, I thought, that might have been good. Since then, I've followed this interest by researching and exploring French colonialism in Vietnam. And now a new novel I've just completed is set in part in Paris in the lead up to the German occupation of World War II. But La Pérouse sparks my interest for more reasons than just matters of history. I'm a creative writer as well as a traditional academic, so for me La Pérouse offers a range of narrative possibilities. Firstly, because, as my primary school teacher suggested, La Pérouse just missed Australia for France. Such chances offer many imaginative leaps. Australians have been very generous to losers. We have been a culture based on an interesting underdog, historical losers from whom we build grand stories of struggle, offering perseverance and humour in the face of adversity. Secondly, La Pérouse disappeared after sailing away from Sydney. His two frigates, Boussole and Astrolabe, headed northeast and were never seen again, sparking an explorer hunt and burning his disappearance into history. Where did he go? What happened to him and his crew? Could he have survived somewhere? How might he have been rescued? These are the questions of great seafaring shipwreck stories like the Medusa, the Batavia, Robinson Crusoe. They also reflect our contemporary passion for ways to survive in the wild. Think Survivor. Think Man versus Wild. They prompt questions of stamina and resourcefulness, and as you all know from the passion of mystery narratives that overwhelm our televisions, there is nothing more compelling than an unanswered question, a mystery. La Pérouse's disappearance certainly contains all these components. Another element that is particularly interesting in relation to La Pérouse is his connection and disconnection with French history. You see in this slide La Pérouse with the equally doomed King Louis XVI, two men who died tragically, but who also shared a dream. King Louis, who was to die at the guillotine in 1793 during the French Revolution, was passionate about discovery. He certainly was influenced by reading about the voyages of Captain Cook and saw La Pérouse's journey as a French equivalent. Two men in consultation over a map. One disappears, another guillotined. As he made his way to the scaffold, the king said, "Quelles sont les nouvelles de La Pérouse?" What news of La Pérouse? And who wouldn't have been keen to know? Just look at the map and the journey La Pérouse took. The work I've been doing on this project is largely reading-based at the moment, and reading about La Pérouse throws up all kinds of information which is seductively interesting. Let me give you some examples. In 1790, a full year later, when Captain Edwards was searching the Pacific for mutineers from the Bounty, he sailed past Vanikoro in the Solomon Islands and saw smoke rising from a hill. The mutineers would have never have advertised their presence like that, he decided, so he sailed on. History would eventually find that the La Perouse craft were actually shipwrecked there. The smoke was probably the last chance of the surviving sailors. Was La Perouse amongst them? Had the last chance of being rescued. So what despair did they feel as they watched the ship sail on? And then there's the story of the reason Captain Phillip didn't meet La Perouse when he sailed into Botany Bay, sailing away to Port Jackson to avoid him, is that Phillip was a spy and had been making clandestine forays into French naval ports. He may even have met La Perouse and hence did not want to be recognised by him. We have a permanent reminder of La Perouse in the Sydney suburb named after him. There's a museum there that celebrates La Perouse's story, and the suburb offers a continuing narrative of him. There's a monument and it's often visited by French naval crews when they come to Australia. It's also the site of Bastille Day celebrations every year. Ironic perhaps in that the fall of the Bastille, that early important moment in the French Revolution, led to the death of the king who had supported La Perouse. The suburb of La Perouse also offers unique Indigenous connections, home of the Bidjigal people, a place where a mission was set up, and Indigenous people from a number of other areas, including the Shoalhaven, were relocated. Today, Lapa, as it's known, is home to many Indigenous descendants of these early groups. There's also the story of the tent city set up there during the Great Depression, when people who'd been evicted from their homes or were looking for somewhere to subsist formed their own little recession-based colony. Many of them were theatre performers from the Tivoli, and they put on shows and entertainment. One act, a snake charmer and performer, may have been an early precursor of the Snake Man and the Snake Pit, which is in La Perouse still. The encampments included veterans from World War I who called them Happy Valley and Hill 60. And then there's the nearby Botany Cemetery with its graves that speak of Australia's multiculturalism in some splendidly eccentric graves, including some of Irish footballers with a stone football atop each grave. And the cemetery abuts the old Chinese market gardens, one of the earliest established market gardens in Sydney. La Perouse is a great place for family with fish cafes, bathing spots, the museum and the colonial fort which featured in the Tom Cruise movie Mission Impossible. It looks across to Kurnell, the airport, the chemical plants, and you get to La Perouse via Anzac Parade, another link when one considers the numbers of Anzacs lost in the trenches of France. I'm also researching La Perouse through the La Perouse Museum in France, in Albi, a town in Languedoc which was also home to the artist Toulouse-Lautrec and to the Albigensian campaign when the Cathars were hunted and executed by the Catholic Church for their beliefs. History, as you see, is a series of onion rings. Peel one away and another appears. Not always directly connected, but connected nevertheless, through place, thought, travel, story, all the way from the King's French drawing room to a little kid in the western suburbs of Sydney. This is why it's globally significant. France and Australia are united through this shared moment when one explorer beat another by hours, and we might have been speaking French. As a creative artist, my use of this research will range. How best to use my examination of the maps and pictures, the log of the voyage that came to us, because La Perouse asked one of the English captains to take it back to Europe with him. How portentous that act. It would have been lost in the shipwreck if he hadn't. I might write a research book and journal articles or a travel narrative that tracks La Perouse around the world or just around Botany Bay. A novel, a suite of poems. La Perouse's story is also the story of Australia, of a time when people set off on remarkable journeys in small sailing ships not much bigger than a Balmain ferry, when nations were formed and taken away from their Indigenous peoples. It was a time when kings fell and the world saw declarations of human rights in the American Revolution and the French, which still shape our ideas about human rights today and equality. And I want to think of the voyage we can't know about, the things that happened after Botany Bay, because for a creative writer, the dotted lines of the unknown, often even greater creative ideas than certainty. Thank you.